Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu has threatened international flyers boarding Air India flights, stating that an attack could occur on its flight after November 19th. Let's quickly go back in history to a ghastly incident that had taken place on the 23rd of June 1985. On that fateful day, Air India Flight 182 had disintegrated mid-air on its way from Canada to India, causing the death of all 329 passengers and crew members on board. Prior to this tragic incident, there had been rumors for months amongst the Indian diaspora in Canada that something was going to happen. Reports also indicated that calls were made to certain individuals of the Sikh community. Plenty of signs were visible too, but no one was paying attention. With that being said, the question that arises now is, should India be taking these threats in a more serious manner? Joining us at this point is Veena Sikri, former diplomat. We also have Major General G.G. Dwivedi, defence expert, live with us. Pathikrit Payan, international affairs expert, is joining us live. Surinder Singh Lali, international affairs expert, also is with us on the broadcast. Let me begin with you first. Ambassador Sikri, another threat being made by Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. Ambassador Sikri, can you hear me? Okay, I think we've lost her connection, unfortunately, there. Do we have Major General Dwivedi with us? Major General Dwivedi, if you can hear me, sir, which way do you believe this threat should be taken by India?
Well, Uday, first and foremost, I think we need to understand the larger picture and join the dots, and then we will be able to get to what exactly is going on and how India should respond. First and foremost, as we know, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu is a designated declared terrorist by India because he is the founder of Sikhs for Justice, and he has been indulging in anti-India activities, secessionism, and also encouraging such elements which are injurious, inimical to India's interest. Now, the point is that over the last about 10 days, we have received 100 odd hoax calls, and adding to that is now Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, his threats. Now, what do we make out of it? First and foremost, there is a sinister design to destabilize India, to malign India's name, and more than that, cause certain amount of fear of psychosis. And that's what we call grey zone warfare. Today, the warfare is not by the bullets and the bombs. It is by such like activities. So therefore, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu is orchestrating a grey zone warfare, which is the way India should take it. So this is an aggression. The second point is such calls cannot be ignored because 100 may be hoax, but one may turn out to be reality. So therefore, they have to be taken very seriously. And more than that, we need to, I think, sensitize the global community. After all, Pannu is a Canadian and US citizen. He has dual citizenship. And in that area, in that nations, in that land, he is carrying out such activities. So therefore, it need to sensitize both the nations and the global such, because this is purely naked terrorism. And the third point, Uday, the point is that we need to act and act very sternly. While we have declared him as a terrorist, but we have not gone beyond that. Now we have to take very tough diplomatic measures to ensure that this person is nailed. And my last point is that the kind of hoaxes and the kind of protocols that we have instituted in our airlines and in our airspace, I think they need to be relooked because it makes a mockery that India is receiving the calls and quite rightly our ministries and aviations are not very, very clear as to how to handle it. I think this is the time that we need to get to the drawing boards and get our protocols absolutely clear and effective. And lastly is that technology today is a game changer. We need to have the same technology and to assess as to what are the calls which are hoax and which could turn actually into a catastrophic situation. Uday.
Absolutely. Pathikrit Payan, should this threat be dismissed or should this be taken with utmost seriousness? Also, the big question is what will Canadians, and the Americans be doing about a threat like this? That is the big question. If an Indian citizen made such threats for a Western airline, we can imagine what would have happened.
Uday, there are two aspects to it. Number one is what India should do internally as to deal with threats like this, because we cannot dismiss all the threats as hoax and false. So we need something called Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, which unfortunately India still does not have. So whether you talk about the threats to India's railway infrastructure, or the threats that we are witnessing in case of aviation, all these are part of threats to critical transport infrastructure as part of critical infrastructure. Most of the major Western countries have a dedicated law to protect critical infrastructure, and any kind of threat or disruption to those infrastructures, lead to massive penalization, long-term imprisonment. Unfortunately, we are dealing with it as a law and order issue, which I look at it as very juvenile. We should be far more serious in terms of dealing with it. Standard operating procedure, as General Dwivedi mentioned, is very, very crucial. We are firefighting the issue rather than having standard SOPs to deal with it and separate laws. So far as Gurpatwant Singh Pannu is concerned, look, for me, Pannu is not that big an issue as the sponsors of Pannu are. Now, exactly what you mentioned, United States, he is a United States citizen. He has dual citizenship of Canada as well, as I know. So we should call him an American terrorist. We should not call him a Khalistani. He's an American terrorist. He's a Canadian terrorist, and he is constantly threatening India's critical infrastructure, threatening Indian high commissioners, trying to create differences, trying to create animosity between the Sikh and the Hindu community, who have brotherhood relations since centuries and since time immemorial. And culturally, we are all same. There are roti and beti rishta between these two communities. He's trying to disrupt that. He is trying to disrupt India's economy. He's threatening terror attacks, sitting inside United States. And look at this. I'm quoting you two things. Last year, Shishir Gupta of Hindustan Times wrote an article where he said that the Intel chief of India that time had told the CIA director that the only reason India was not targeting Pannu is because India believes that he works for CIA and Langley. Number one. And I'm quoting from Shishir Gupta's article in Hindustan Times. Second, look at what the Federal Bureau of Investigation director recently mentioned about this so-called expose that United States did on the Vikas Yadav or alleged assassination attempt of Pannu. So FBI director says that FBI will not tolerate acts of violence or other efforts to retaliate against those residing in US for exercising their constitutionally protected rights. Now look at this double standard and hypocrisy of United States. When they go for war on terror, they expect everyone to be on their side. If you are not on the American side in the war on terror, then they presume that you are against them. But when it comes to threats to other countries and their territorial integrity, organizations, secessionist organizations settling in United States or Canada, have consistently threatened India's sovereignty, and America has simply passed it on as freedom of expression or right to dissent. I mean, this is where the hypocrisy stands. And therefore, Uday, we should be very careful about one thing. While we agree that United States is a strategic partner of India, but if the strategic partner of India is threatened by so-called assets, I would rather say, of United States sitting in United States and threatening India, then we should have second thoughts about long-term defense agreements or procurement of critical weapon systems from US, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Look at what is happening with the General Electric engines for Tejas Mark 1A. It has been inordinately delayed. It is almost like completely sabotaging India's Tejas fighter plane program. So while we are a strategic partner of United States, I think somewhere we need a whole of government approach. We can't look at these things in isolation. Approach of United States when it comes to using such secessionist organizations against the interest of India on one hand, and then asking India to deepen defense deals, defense tie-ups with United States, these can't go together. So I think we actually believe that United States is a good partner. But United States must understand that just as we need United States also need us. So this hypocrisy and double standard cannot go on forever. That war on terror is mandatory for everyone to fight if that terror threatens United States. But if it threatens somebody else or a country like India, then it becomes freedom of expression. An FBI director will come and openly say that we are all there to protect them. That actually questions not just the double standard, but the intent of United States, or at least the State Department. There is a duality approach. We can discuss it sometime later. But unfortunately, today it's getting exposed. And I think you would see, while United States still has a lot of admiration in India, somewhere the average Indian today have double thoughts about the intent of United States. It's good that if they actually mend their ways, because this cannot go on forever. Back to you.
All right, let me in fact quickly take that to Surinder Singh Lali now. Surinder Singh Lali, another threat being made by Gurpatwant Singh Pannu for Air India flights for the month of November. What do you make of this latest message by him? How should it be taken by India? And what is the West doing about it?
3 months ago, I took a flight from Charlotte to San Francisco. It was a red-eye flight. And when I landed in the morning in San Francisco, about 4 gentlemen from TSA, which is what handles the American security, walked up to me and said that, "Sir, can you please step aside? We have a few questions for you." They were very courteous, and they took me to the side. They spent an hour asking me various questions, checked my luggage, and then let me go. So as I was exiting, I turned back and said, "Officer, I think I would be well within my right to know, why have you picked me up? I mean, is this some sort of profiling?" And then one of the officers said, tall black gentleman says, "Well, the pilot had found you suspicious." I said, "Did he give any reason?" He goes, "No, sir, he didn't give any reason, and he was not even obligated to give us any reasons." So I don't know. Maybe the pilot didn't like the color of my turban or my facial hair. So I was picked up. I was profiled for something as non-inconsequential as that. And then we have Mr. Pannu yapping for the last 1.5 years, being an absolute nuisance value. And the American law enforcement is conveniently quiet on him. Of course, if you see, he makes all of these remarks in a very cryptic manner so that, they can't take him to court because they are the ones who are giving him security. The other thing, Air India is a star alliance and it has 25 other airlines in it, which includes United, which includes Air Canada, which includes Singapore and Thai and even Swiss. So which means that if you buy an Air India ticket in codeshare, you could be traveling in any of the other airlines. Why are the other 23 quiet? Because end of the day, in a codeshare, if America doesn't take suo moto action, the others are quiet too. And I think so is Air India. So if you look at this is, I think now the Americans and Canadians are doing that typical American good cop, bad cop thing. Because as Mr. Paine rightly said in that article of Mr. Shishir Gupta, that Canada is just a wingman to the United States and they're just using him as a proxy. The irony is that individual, Justin Trudeau, is too foolish to be used only for seats which are 800,000, less than 2%, and the Canadian population to have ruined a relation between two countries. I'll just tell you one last minute, the mindset between the father and the son. There were enough reports even back then by the Canadian intelligence, for which the ex-Canadian intelligence officer and Ujjwal Dosanjh, who happens to be the premier of, ex-premier, the chief minister of, British Columbia. There were enough reports said that these are two Johnnies who are conducting these, tests outside the city. This is before Kanishk happened. But you know how Senior Trudeau brushed it up by saying, "I don't care, this is one color turban fighting the other." They had enough reports and they didn't do anything. Now, in a further act of one of the biggest Freudian slips in the world, Pierre Trudeau calls up Rajiv Gandhi and expresses condolences. For what? Out of the 327 people, 280 were Canadian citizens and 84 were children. So if anything, it should have been the other way around. And my last point is that given the way cyberkinetic warfare is on, and also given the way that the Canadian Prime Minister is beholden to such a small fringe rogue, Can you understand the level of exposure on airlines flying out of Canada are? I mean, all it takes is, God forbid, God forbid, God forbid, one idiot to allow just one bag escape the screening process. And, we can't not even think of having another disaster. So I'm going to go a step further, stick my neck beyond my pay grade and say that till the time situations don't improve, we should think of either suspending our flights, because we are very vulnerable. That's a moving target to all these fringe rogues who are nourished in Canada under the bogey of free speech. Thank you, then.
Yes. Let me go back to Ambassador Sikri. I believe she's back with us now on the broadcast. Ambassador Sikri, the question I was trying to ask you earlier on this threat by Pannu, what is your perception of it? Why is the West continuing to maintain silence over his utterances, which are brazen terror threats? And is this hypocrisy? Because if this had been an Indian spewing this kind of venom, we all know what would the US and Canadian governments been saying.
Yes, absolutely. I agree that the threats are unacceptable. And I think there are two factors here that India should take up in a strong way, not only directly with USA and Canada, but with any international forum. One is terrorism. The whole definition of terrorism, is this a terrorist act or not? In my mind, it is, because you're threatening terrorism. You're openly threatening terrorism. You're saying that you're going to, you're warning people don't go on various flights. You're talking about the 40th anniversary, of the Golden Temple event. You're talking of all kinds of events which can easily incite anybody, as our panelist just said. Anybody can, take it into his mind to do something. So I think this incitement to terrorism, this must come. This is not freedom of speech. It is incitement to terrorism. Second thing is the very definition of freedom of speech. I mean, is it freedom of speech when you are openly threatening another country, not only with secessionist acts, but with terrorist acts? So I think these two aspects have to be taken up very strongly with these governments and with everyone, because today we are the ones who are directly suffering. And I myself have been on a flight, which received one of these threats, from all these organizations, and I've seen what it can cause among the people who are flying, and how much it is terrible. It's a very, very frightening situation, and I think that we have to not take it quietly at all. You cannot, in a neighborhood, you have two people fighting, and the other one says, "I'm going to kill everybody in this neighborhood." Are you going to accept that? Aren't you going to take action against that individual and say, "Come on, you better come in and we better talk to you seriously"? You can't do it. This is against all the rule of law. So any country which believes in the rule of law cannot allow such statements in the name of freedom of speech, and these must be clearly defined as terrorist acts. I think these are the two issues which we take up very strongly and not hesitate to. We've seen already among the Five Eyes that, USA, Canada, and UK have asked India to cooperate. But both Australia and New Zealand have asked the Canadian Prime Minister, I'm talking about the case of the Niger killing, have asked the Canadian Prime Minister for evidence, and have said, give us evidence, and then we will ask the Indian government to take it up. So I think that this is the way we have to talk to all countries and governments and make sure that these things do not continue to happen at all. And as strongly as we can take it up, the most likelihood that they will not happen at all in the near future.
Okay, let me in fact also ask you then, Pathikrit Payan, is this issue being taken up seriously enough by India? What more can be done and should be done?
No, I'm sure the government of India is definitely taking up these cases with the respective governments of Canada and United States. These are very delicate situations. There are delicate, difficult times that the world is going through. So I think they are very nuanced in their approach, and not everything comes out in the media as to what is being talked about. But all that I'm saying is this, that United States need to be told sometime, just as I mentioned what the Shishir Gupta article had mentioned, that this cannot go on forever. Of course, by drastically reducing the diplomatic ties with Canada, I think a message has been given that enough is enough. But as Mr. Lali rightly mentioned, that Trudeau is just a pawn. Actually, it is probably the entire thing is being done by the big brother of Canada. And I mean, Trudeau is too small to actually jeopardize a relationship with Canada for the heck of it. So, United States for far too long had this entire duality of diplomacy approach, where on one hand they would have deepened your ties, tell you that you are a great democracy, but on the other hand they will use these leverages to create problems for you. And essentially United States always prefer fragile governments in developing countries. Their problem is India is growing phenomenally in spite of all the challenges, trying to be far more resilient, having an independent foreign policy. It's creating problems. But only thing I'm only talking about is this: we should be very, very careful about these critical defense deals concerning engines. We have seen what happened with General GE engine for the Tejas Mark 1A. I mean, there is an inordinate delay. It's almost on the borderline of sabotaging your Tejas program. And then to presume that, okay, let's have more defense deals, that will help them and make them happy. No, I think the Defense Department is far more pragmatic about India, United States Department of Defense. But I think the State Department and its approach towards India has been extremely unfortunate. It is filled with certain kinds of elements who hate India. So it's not going to change so soon. That's why I'm saying we need a whole of government approach, and Critical Infrastructure Protection Act is needed in India. You need to tell countries like United States also, anyone threatens India's critical infrastructure is equally guilty, and they cannot be given that kind of favor which is being given by United States. That double standard needs to be exposed far more. I think the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister has handled it very well in the last 4 years. There's been enormous amount of pressure, but I think somewhere a little more stern approach maybe is required, though I'm not the best person to advise the government what they should do. Back to you.
Okay, let's start getting closing comments then. Major General Dwivedi.
To make only 2 points. First and foremost, please understand the whole dynamics and definition of security stand changed. And what people like Gurpatwant Singh Pannu are doing, this is a aggression, hybrid warfare, and grey zone warfare. We cannot ignore it, and we have to take it as a security threat to India, and not just only some mad person making these noises. Secondly, understand the larger dynamics. Why is such a person able to cause so much turbulence in this relationship? Because there are some forces behind it, and those forces need to be identified. And my last point is, diplomacy today is only not soft part of it. There is a hard diplomatic way to deal. Well, we cannot compromise the national interest for the strategic sake. They go hand in hand. Therefore, I think the American leadership must be made to understand that India's national interest will also come as prime. And as they want to defend their citizens, so do we. I think this message must go very clearly. And my last point is, we need to tighten our protocols, because if we start suspending flights, that means the terrorists like Gurpatwant Singh Pannu have achieved their aim. We need to defeat the design by having very strong and foolproof protocols so that their designs are defeated. Uday.
All right. Surinder Singh Lali, last word to you.
What I find, if not laughable and appalling, is that Sikhs for justice. I mean, 85% of the Sikhs live in India. We have elections every 5 years. Who is he seeking justice for? And what is the validity of this very cliched word called a referendum when we are living here? There are elections in Punjab and all three parties got a bit of their share depending on what. I mean, not to mention this one gentleman who's sitting in jail and won the election. So I don't know which Sikh body, which Sikh religion he seems to be representing. He can probably answer best.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.